I'm not new to doing favors for friends, but this one, I almost wish I'd said no. A few weeks ago, my friend Rhea asked if I could stay at her apartment for one night. She was going out of town for a family emergency in North Carolina and needed someone to be there because maintenance was coming early the next morning to fix a leak under her sink, and she didn't want anyone entering her place while it was empty. It seemed simple enough, so I agreed. She left me the spare key and a rundown of where everything was, and that was that. I got there around 9 p.m. It was a cozy, small one-bedroom apartment in a quiet area. When I walked in, the place smelled clean. Knowing her, I bet she tidied up before she left. I microwaved some dinner while working on my laptop. I was taking an online course at the time and was working on a project. After a few hours, I eventually fell asleep on her couch. Then around 2 a.m., something woke me up. It wasn't a sound, just the feeling of the presence of someone. I dismissed it at first as it was an old building, plus I was half asleep. But before I went back to sleep, I noticed something under the door. The hallway light outside the apartment door was on. I hadn't turned it on, and Rhea always left it off, saying that it shined under the door crack and annoyed her. I sat up slowly, and then I heard a soft scrape. It wasn't loud. It sounded like someone was trying to turn a metal doorknob very, very slowly. I sat there and frozen on the couch, listening. Another slow scrape, then a faint metallic click. Someone was testing the lock. I grabbed my phone, heart pounding, and called Rhea. She picked up on the second ring with her voice groggy but suddenly alert when she heard mine.
"Someone's at your door,"
I whispered. She went dead silent. Then she said,
"Are they inside?"
"No, but they're trying the handle."
She inhaled sharply through the phone and said,
"What about the chain lock? Did you put it on?"
I stared at the door and the chain was off.
"No, I forgot to put it on,"
I said. She cursed under her breath. Then in this low, terrified voice, she said,
"Listen to me carefully. You need to get out of the apartment right now."
Every hair on my body stood up.
"Rhea, what's going on?"
"I don't have time to explain. Hurry up and go out the balcony window."
I can tell she was shaking as I could hear her breath catching between words.
"Rhea, tell me what's..."
Before I could finish, I heard a tiny metallic snap, and the deadbolt turned halfway. Whoever was on the other side is opening the door. My body went numb for a second. I hung up, grabbed my shoes, and moved towards the balcony door, trying to be as quiet as possible. The front doorknob began slowly turning, and then the door creaked. Not enough to open, just enough to peep through. I stepped onto the balcony, closed the sliding door, and crouched down. Rhea's unit was on the second floor, which was low enough to jump, high enough to break an ankle. But I didn't have time to think. Inside the apartment, the front door then opened. I didn't look back. I swung my legs over the railing and dropped. The landing knocked the wind out of me, but I scrambled into the bushes, limping across the lot. When I called 911, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone twice. The police arrived within minutes later, and a felt of relief washed over me. One officer took my statement while the others searched Rhea's apartment. When they got in, it was empty. Whoever went in was already gone. The officer then escorted me back inside, and they asked if anything was missing. At first glance, everything seemed in place until I went back to the living room. I stood there frozen, looking at the table, because my laptop was gone. It didn't make sense to me. Why steal my laptop? The officer frowned and wrote it down.
Do you know why someone would want that?
I stared at him.
"No, I don't. There was no reason. Nothing on it had value to a stranger."
I then called Rhea. She must have heard the panic in my voice because she didn't even say hello.
"What happened? Did they hurt you?"
"Rhea, listen. My laptop is gone. Someone stole it. Why would they take it? What were they looking for? What did you have here?"
Then silence. I heard her breathing quicken, shaky, panicked, like she was fighting the urge to be sick.
Is my laptop still there?"
"Where did you leave it?"
"I left it in my bedroom on the bed."
We then went into her bedroom, and there it was, her laptop on her bed under some clothes. That's when Rhea started crying.
I knew it. I knew he'd try something. I knew he'd come back.
Rhea, what was on your laptop?
Then she said,
Footage!
What footage?
The night he hurt me, I secretly had my laptop recording everything. I also filmed myself when I was crying afterwards. I was trying to build up the courage to take it to the police this week.
And he knew?
Yes. He always knows. Somehow he always knows. But he grabbed the wrong laptop.
My MacBook and hers were the same model and same color. To someone rushing in the dark, they were identical. One of the officers interrupted gently.
Ma'am, nobody saw his face. There's no video of him entering. Just a shadow. We can't confirm it was her ex unless we have proof.
Rhea whispered through tears.
He did this. I know he did.
But knowing wasn't enough for the report. It wasn't enough for them to act, and now the one piece of evidence she needed was still sitting inside her apartment untouched, while he was somewhere out there holding mine instead. She was still on the phone, crying softly, apologizing over and over even though none of this was her fault.
I'm so sorry. I swear I didn't think he knew where I moved. I should have told you. I should have warned you.
Rhea, I'm just glad you're safe. That's all that matters right now.
I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the shaking in my hands. But she kept going.
When I get home, I'll replace your laptop. The exact model. Everything. I promise. I don't care what it costs. I can't believe this happened because of me.
The guilt in her voice hurt more than anything that happened that night.
You don't need to worry about that right now. Just stay where you are. Don't come back alone, and call the detective first thing tomorrow.
She sniffled, then let out a shaky breath.
Okay, I will.
The police finished taking our statements. Their questions felt mechanical, but I could tell they were trying to piece things together without giving me false hope. One officer handed me a case number and told me to call if I remembered anything else. When they left, I grabbed my bag with shaking hands and took one last look at the balcony door. Then I left. When I got home, I double-locked my door and checked every room in my house before laying down. Safe to say that was the last time I house-sit. This was the night a lady asked me for help and I almost didn't survive. I used to work at Lake Forest Mall in Maryland back in 2020, right before it finally shut down. If you ever stepped foot in that place during its last years, you know exactly what I mean when I say it always felt off. Not dangerous, just strangely empty. Sometimes random groups of people loitering with no real reason to be there. Then there were dark corners where the lights never seemed bright enough. It always had a vibe that made you walk faster without knowing why. Everyone who worked there joked about it, but more than a few of us admitted the place gave us the creeps once it shut down. That night, I was the last person out of my store. I turned the key, locked up, and started walking towards the exit that leads to the side parking lot and the bus stop. As soon as I stepped outside, a woman suddenly rushed out of nowhere. She startled me so badly I almost screamed.
I'm sorry.
She gasped immediately.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to scare you.
She looked completely shaken. She looked like she was in her late 20s, wearing a nice coat with her hair pulled back, breathing hard. Her eyes kept looking over her shoulder.
What's wrong?
She swallowed like her throat was closing.
Someone's been following me.
She whispered.
Through the mall. I didn't know where else to go.
Her fear looked real. Her shaking looked real. Her voice sounded like she had been holding back tears for blocks. Every instinct in me softened.
Oh my God, are you okay? No.
She whispered.
Can I walk with you? Just to your car or whatever? Please?
I didn't have a car, but I didn't say that yet because she looked like she needed someone and not to be alone. We started walking fast towards the big parking lot. It was so quiet that our footsteps echoed sharply. Every few steps, she whipped her head around to look behind us.
Did you park, Flar?
She asked suddenly.
I take the bus.
I said. She stopped for a half second.
Okay, that's fine. We can go that way.
Her voice was a little too quick, almost like she had to catch herself, but I brushed it off. People act weird when they're scared, right? The bus stop was a short walk down the sidewalk that wrapped around the building. She stuck close to me, practically glued to my side. Every few seconds, she glanced back toward the loading docks, not nervously, methodically, as if waiting for something to emerge.
I swear, he was right there.
She whispered.
He kept following me from the escalators.
I didn't see anyone, but the loading dock area was huge and full of blind corners.
Let's just get to the bus stop.
I said. She nodded, but her breathing got quicker.
I feel like he's still here.
She whispered. Her fear, it felt infectious. I walked faster. We rounded the back corner of the mall and my bus stop was maybe 100 feet ahead when she suddenly grabbed my arm.
Wait, can you walk me to my car first?
She asked, voice trembling.
I parked right there.
She pointed to a row of cars a few feet away. Her car was a silver sedan and was parked almost too perfectly under a flickering light post.
I really don't want to walk alone.
She pleaded.
Just until I unlock it. It'll only take 2 seconds.
Everything in me wanted to help her, but deep down, it felt wrong. I looked at her and she looked terrified.
Okay.
I said. She exhaled in relief and we walked towards her car. When we reached her car, she started rummaging through her purse.
I know they're in here somewhere. My keys. Just give me a second.
She was shaking so hard I thought she might drop the whole bag.
Just stand there.
She whispered, pointing to a very specific spot near her passenger door.
Block my view. I don't want him to see me.
I stepped where she pointed, facing outwards while watching the sidewalk. I felt like a shield while she kept rummaging. But something changed. The rummaging got quieter. Then it stopped. I turned my head slightly and realized she wasn't shaking anymore. She wasn't rummaging. She wasn't scared. She was standing perfectly still and watching me. Her expression became blank and cold. She wasn't scared anymore. She was completely calm. My heart started racing at 100 miles per hour.
What? What is it?
I whispered. She blinked once with a cold silence. Then she said,
You really shouldn't walk alone after closing.
That's when I saw movement. Not behind us, not in the mall, but under the open space beneath the loading dock ramp. A man slides out from the shadow very quietly and cautiously. Then another man appeared. My mouth went dry and my stomach completely flipped. I then realized exactly what had been happening. No one was following her. She was leading me here. A cold ripple traveled down my spine. Behind her, the two men moved again, fully stepping into the weak pool of yellow light cast by the street lamp. Seeing them clearly made the fear hit differently, not loud and panicked, but heavy like sand filling my lungs. They didn't sprint. They didn't shout. They just walked towards me with the slow certainty of people who already knew how this was supposed to end. I took a step back, but the woman stopped me with that blank, cold expression and said,
Don't bother running.
She said it like she was giving me some good advice. They continued closing in. One cracked his knuckles loud enough to echo off the concrete, while the other tilted his head, hands still lazily tucked in his pockets, eyes locked onto me like he was studying a piece of meat he knew he'd be carrying in a few seconds. My heartbeat roared in my ears. The woman took another small step closer. She was close enough now that I could smell her perfume. It smelled like those cheap perfume samples they gave out in the store. For a tense, breathless moment, none of us moved. They watched me like hunters waiting for the exact second to pounce. My heart hammered so loudly I swore they could hear it. Then all of a sudden, a voice cut through the silence. Hey, what's going on over there? We all snapped towards the sound. An older man, maybe late 60s, carrying a plastic grocery bag, had stopped at the edge of the lot. I said, what's going on? He squinted toward us, raising his voice again. The woman's expression flickered, but not fear, but more of irritation. And one of the men muttered something under his breath. They were all distracted for a small moment, but that moment was everything. All three of them turned towards him, and that tiny shift, that split second of their eyes leaving me, was my chance. Adrenaline snapped through me and I sprinted off. I could hear the woman curse sharply behind me, then all three of them exploded into a sprint after me. Their shouts ricocheted across the empty lot, sharp and violent, pushing me faster. My lungs felt like they were ripping apart and my legs trembled under my own weight. My vision blurred at the edges as cold air stabbed through my throat, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. The bus stop's streetlight came into view like a lifeline, and by some miracle, headlights appeared behind it. It was a bus. My bus, to be exact. It was seconds from pulling away, and I poured whatever strength I had left into one final sprint, with my shoes slapping the pavement so hard it hurt. The driver saw me at the last second and hit the brakes. The doors hissed open and I practically threw myself inside.
Close it.
I gasped.
Close the door!
Startled, he slammed the doors shut. I staggered backward into a seat, collapsing into it, every limb trembling violently. My chest felt like it was going to split open. I couldn't draw air fast enough. Each breath came out ragged, broken, like my lungs were catching fire. The bus started moving before I even got a full inhale. I pressed a shaking hand against my forehead, trying to steady myself as my whole body felt electric, with a mix of fear, adrenaline, and delayed realization. The other passengers stared at me, confused and uneasy. Someone whispered, "Is she okay?" But I couldn't answer. I turned toward the window, still gasping, and through the fog of my own breath I saw them. The woman and the two men standing at the curb just beyond the glow of the streetlight. Not running, not yelling, just watching the bus pull away. I tore my gaze away from the window, heart hammering in my throat as the bus carried me farther from them. My breaths were finally beginning to even out, but the shaking wouldn't stop. I wasn't sure if it was the cold air still trapped in my lungs or the realization of how close I'd come to never making it home. The farther the bus got from the mall, the more the world outside blurred into streaks of dull light and empty sidewalks. My breathing slowly steadied, but the tremors wouldn't leave my hands. Nobody on the bus asked anything else. They whispered a little and stared for a moment. Then they went back to scrolling on their phones or staring at through the window. I almost wished someone would sit next to me or ask if I was okay. At least say something that would anchor me back into reality. But everyone just let me dissolve quietly into the background. By the time we got close to my neighborhood, the bus was nearly empty. When my stop came up, I hesitated for a second. I looked out through the dark glass, scanning the sidewalk, the bus shelter, the street corners, as if I was half expecting to see the woman standing there waiting, but there was nothing. I finally stood and pulled the cord, the ding echoing louder than it should have. The bus hissed to a stop. "Take care," the driver said quietly as I stepped off. It was the first human warmth I'd felt since everything started. I nodded, unable to get words past the lump in my throat. The doors closed and the bus rolled away, its taillights shrinking at the end of the block until they disappeared. I wrapped my arms around myself and walked home as fast as I could without breaking into a run. Just me, shaken and exhausted, making my way up the stairs to my building, unlocking my door with trembling fingers and finally shutting myself inside. When the lock clicked into place, my knees buckled. I slid down to the floor and stayed there, breathing hard, listening to the quiet of my own apartment. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the woman's face again, with that calm, patient uncertainty. One thing kept replaying in my mind. If that older man hadn't walked by at the exact moment he did, I wouldn't have been on that bus. That was the night I learned how thin the line is between making it home and not. Before I tell you my story, I already know how it's going to sound. You can call me stupid, careless, and I probably deserve it. It happened back in 2017 when I was 21 years old. I'd just finished community college and was living at home with my mom and my little brother Caleb, who was 8 at the time. Our dad wasn't in the picture. And Mom worked long shifts at the hospital, so a lot of the time it felt like Caleb was my kid. That night was supposed to be simple. Mom was working late, so it was just me and Caleb. We were going to grab dinner, rent a movie, and just hang out. It was early March, one of those overcast evenings where it still feels like winter. The air had that sharp chill to it that bites your ears. When I picked Caleb up from school, he practically jumped into the car grinning. He had this big binder full of Pokemon cards and kept bragging about how he'd finally traded for something called Charizard EX. He wanted to show me every single card, naming them like I was supposed to be impressed. Anyways, on the way home, I remembered that we were out of pasta sauce and milk. I decided to make a quick stop at the grocery store, which was right on the main road about 5 minutes from home. I pulled up into the parking lot. Caleb didn't want to come in, said he wanted to stay in the car and sort his cards. I hesitated at first, but it was cold outside. It was around in the low 40s and I didn't want him freezing, so I left the keys in the ignition so the heat could stay running. I parked in one of the first few spots near the front doors, right under a light pole. I told him it'll only take 2 minutes. Then I locked the doors and went inside. I could see the car clearly through the big glass windows. At the time, he was laying across the back seat, binder open, totally absorbed. I didn't even grab a basket. I just went straight for the milk and a jar of sauce. I remember walking fast, thinking about how good dinner was going to taste. When I got to the register, there was one woman ahead of me, paying in cash, digging through her purse for change. I glanced outside while waiting, and through the reflection on the glass, I could still see my car. The lady was still trying to find change, all while talking to the cashier. When I looked again 30 seconds later at the window, my car was gone. At first, I thought maybe my mind was playing tricks. I stepped closer to the glass, heart pounding. The spot I knew I parked in was empty. I dropped everything and sprinted outside. I looked around the lot, but my car wasn't anywhere in sight. I started yelling my brother's name, running up and down the parking lot like a maniac. Some people stopped to look. One woman came over asking what happened, and when I told her someone took my car with my little brother inside, she immediately called 911. The dispatcher kept saying, "Stay where you are. Officers are on the way." But I couldn't stand still. I was shaking so hard I could barely talk. The cops got there 10 minutes later. They started checking nearby businesses for cameras. The grocery store's cameras didn't catch the lot clearly, but a small electronics store across the street had one pointed toward the main exit. I stood there with one of the officers as they pulled the footage up on their monitor. You can see the parking lot in the distance. Then, around 5:35 p.m., a man walks across the frame. Hoodie, jeans, moving casual. He stops beside my car, looks around for a few seconds, then opens the driver's door. He gets in, hesitates for a beat, and then the car pulls away. The camera only caught that. You can't see inside the car. They put out an Amber Alert immediately. Officers went in every direction, checking intersections, gas stations, cameras, everything. I called my mom and she left work instantly. By the time she arrived, the lot was swarming with cops and flashing lights. She ran up to me screaming, asking where Caleb was. I didn't even know what to say. I just kept repeating, I was only inside for 2 minutes. Then an hour later, they found my car. It was ditched on the shoulder of a service road near a half-built neighborhood about 12 miles away. The engine was still running with the door half open, but Caleb wasn't in it. When I got there, his Pokemon cards were scattered all over the back seat and floor, some bent, some torn. His jacket was still there too. I felt like my chest was about to collapse. I thought that was it. Then not even 30 minutes later, a call came through the police radio. Someone in a nearby subdivision had found a barefoot kid standing in the street crying. It was Caleb. Turns out the guy was a car thief. He'd spotted the Civic idling with windows fogged from the heater, lights on, with no driver. He thought it was empty. What he didn't know was that Caleb was lying down across the back seat, face buried in his cards. To make it worse, from outside, you couldn't see him at all. After he took the car, the man realized there was a child in the back seat after he'd already turned onto the main road. He freaked out, pulled over a few miles later, and told Caleb to get out. Caleb said the man's voice was shaking when he told him, "I'm not gonna hurt you, buddy. Just get out, okay?" Then he drove off again and left my brother standing alone in the cold. He wandered around until a couple driving home saw him and called the police. The man was caught 2 days later. He was trying to steal another car when the police found him. He confessed right away and said he never meant to take the kid as he just saw a car running and grabbed it. I wish I could say that made it easier to live with. It didn't. Caleb wasn't physically hurt, but he was quiet for weeks afterward. He didn't want to talk about it and didn't want to get in the car anymore. Mom barely spoke to me for a month. When she finally did, she didn't yell. She just said, "You left the keys in." That was it. And she was right. Caleb's 16 now. He doesn't bring it up, but I can tell he remembers. Ever since that day, there's been a distance between us. He says it's fine, but deep down, I know it isn't. Even years later, I still have flashbacks about that day. My girlfriend, Vicky, worked the closing shift at a small family-owned store on the edge of town. It wasn't in a dangerous area, but it also wasn't exactly the kind of place you'd want to hang around after midnight. Still, her shifts always ended at 11:30 p.m., and she always texted me before she left. That night, no text came in. At first, I figured she was busy cleaning up or talking to her boss. Then around 12:15 a.m., I called, but no answer. I tried again at 12:30 a.m., and it went straight to voicemail. By 1 a.m., I got really suspicious, so I got into my car and drove over there. When I pulled into the lot, her blue Civic was still parked up. The store interior lights were off. I then walked up to the car, looking inside, but it was empty. I tried the door, but it was locked. Her car wasn't running, but her purse was on the passenger seat, visible through the window. I got back to my car and decided I would drive around the area, hoping I could find something. Nothing. I pulled over and called one of her friends, Stacy, and asked if she saw her. She said the last time she heard from Vicky was on Sunday. I've never felt so useless. I drove back to her car and just sat there with endless theories going through my head. I called the police and they sent an officer to take a report, but they kept repeating the same thing. Adults are allowed to go missing for a while. Maybe she left with a friend. Except Vicky didn't have friends she'd leave work with at midnight, but they didn't understand that. I stayed there while the officer walked around the building, shining their flashlights along the walls, the dumpsters, and the bushes beside the loading area. It took maybe 15 minutes for him to finish. One of them came back shaking his head. Nothing. Another patrol car eventually showed up, and the two officers searched a bit farther across the street behind the closed gas station next door. Even along the tree line behind the store. One of them radioed in to see if anyone had spotted a woman matching Vicky's description walking alone. But still nothing. Around 2:15 a.m., the officer came over and sighed like he'd already given up. We'll file a missing person report, but there's really not much we can do without evidence of a crime. We're going to tow the car in for a formal search. It's standard when a person goes missing. I watched as they shined their light through the window to check inside. Neither of them reacted to the purse. They barely reacted to anything. One of the officers jotted something down on a clipboard, then said, "We'll take it to the impound lot and look through it in the morning. If anything turns up, you'll be the first to know." I wanted to scream. How could her purse sitting in a locked, unattended car not count as something turning up? But I didn't argue. The tow truck arrived around 3 a.m. They hooked her Civic up, tilted it onto the flatbed, and drove off with its headlights bouncing through the empty lot. And suddenly it was just me, standing in the silence, cold, alone. I stayed there another hour just staring at the dark storefront, telling myself she would walk around the corner any second, but she never did. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was from the same officer, and I answered nervously. He then asked if I had a spare key to Vicky's car. And I did. They told me something that didn't make sense. Her car was unlocked when we collected it. That morning when I went to her car, I checked the door myself and it was definitely locked. That only means that someone came back when I left, opened it for whatever reason. But for what? Why go back to the car? Why unlock and not take it? One night I couldn't sleep. I went outside at 2 a.m. to sit in Vicky's car and just let myself fall apart. When I got in, the driver's seat was pushed way back. Vicky never adjusted that seat. She was short and kept it almost pressed to the dashboard. But for some reason it leaned far back like someone larger had been sitting there. I reached beneath the seat to slide it forward and my fingers brushed something. It was a small metal object, wedged tight in the seat track, like it had fallen out of a pocket and gotten trapped under the rail. I pulled it out and it was a key. But it wasn't a car key or a house key. It was a storage unit key. The old-fashioned kind that was brass scratched with a cheap black plastic cover over the top. The tag attached to it was cracked and worn, but I could still read the engraving. Ridgeway Self-Storage Unit A 17. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Someone had been in Vicky's car and dropped their storage unit key. Whoever it was came back to the car, unlocked it, searched for it and couldn't find it. They were close enough to the store to come back unnoticed. I called the police and they came immediately. They took the key, called it in, and then we headed to the unit. When we arrived, we spoke to a worker at the unit. During that investigation, they found out that the unit was rented with a fake ID with a phony name. No address, and it was paid in cash. When the police got to the unit, the padlock on A17 had already been broken off. It was cleanly snapped, like someone had forced their way in recently. When they slid the door open, the beam of their flashlight didn't reveal boxes or furniture. It revealed a bare concrete floor and a long, dark drag mark stretching from the back wall all the way to the entrance. The drag marks led toward the parking lot. The facility worker said the unit had been accessed late at night multiple times that month. Always after hours, always in short bursts, always by the same fake renter. No cameras faced that hallway. The few that existed had been malfunctioning for days. When the detectives finally stepped back from the empty unit, their flashlights sweeping over nothing but bare concrete and those awful drag marks, I felt something inside me sink. This was it. This was the first real lead in weeks. The first physical connection to whoever took Vicky. And it was gone. One detective came up beside me and said, "Whoever was here is probably long gone, but we'll keep digging." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking that she's out there, calling for help, and I can't do anything. People always say that time heals all wounds, but after 5 years later, this wound is still open.